The definition of self-diagnosis is, quote, the process of diagnosing or identifying medical conditions in oneself, unquote. The topic my group chose to discuss is about how self-diagnosis culture damages the validity of those with diagnosed mental health disorders. There's a long history of people who diagnose themselves with mental health disorders, and this often creates a negative stigma surrounding it. It is often focused around people saying comments such as, I need to wash my hands so much, I'm so OCD, and studying for this test is making me have anxiety. To understand the issue with self diagnosis of mental health disorders, you have to first look at both sides of the issue. Realize that social media plays a large part in it, and then learn from the ways that self diagnosis has been implemented in one's everyday life because the vocabulary people around you use. When researching this topic, you need to take a step back and see the various parts that play into the issues of self diagnosis. Not everyone thinks it is as big of an issue as it is. Some don't think it is an issue at all, and others take serious offense to it. You don't have to be diagnosed with a mental illness to have an opinion about this, and it is often people who are not professionally diagnosed that have a lot to say about it. Although individuals who have been diagnosed with mental health illness are also looped into the negative stigma of this when people start self diagnosing. In this presentation, we discuss the effects social media has on self diagnosis stigma, diagnosis that are not available to some people or are too expensive, how to understand that this is an issue, and lastly, bring light into the fact that self diagnosis is not something anyone should do because it is not safe for the one being diagnosed or others around them. We then step back from the issue and also discuss the other side of the argument, how it can be easy to read up on symptoms and diagnose yourself without seeking medical attention first and talking to a doctor, and not having access to said doctor who is able to diagnose you.
So this section talks about a sense of control and understanding, and basically shows why it's good that some people start to diagnose themselves. So first of all, it's easy to get a quick diagnosis of what you're feeling online so that you can easily understand what you're going through. Some people might be going through something every day or randomly or quickly, and they can't just automatically make an appointment to go somewhere and get help. And other people that they're around, like friends and family, might not have the right resources to be able to help them. So if you just do a quick search on Google, it's easy to find out like your symptoms and how to help treat yourself and everything. As well, there's other apps like Reddit, TikTok, Instagram, really any social media that people can look at to try to relate to other people, because I see a lot of videos and tweets and stuff personally about how people go through certain mental illnesses and their experience and how they got through it. So it is definitely beneficial for people, especially since social media is so prominent these days, for people to kind of hear other people's stories and share their own stories, because what's the best way to help yourself other than, like relating to others? Because if one thing works for one person, I mean, it may or may not work for another person, but at least you can find somebody who went through the same thing as you so they can give you advice and also make you feel less alone. And then the next point, some people say that therapists are a waste of time and money because they just kind of repeat the same things to patients. Some, not all, but I would say a lot of therapists, like they're trained and everything, but a lot of them have not experienced the actual issues themselves that they're trying to help other patients with. So therapy might not always be the best option. Honestly, I know a lot of people who say that therapy really didn't even help them and that it was a waste of money. They just say the same like cliche type of things without really helping. The next point, reading online can help people get self-help for whatever issues they're facing on a daily basis. So, kind of back to the first point, like if you can't get quick help, or you don't have the resources to be able to get to a therapist or somebody professional, reading online is really a great tool. It's a great resource because you need to help yourself or nothing's going to get better. So if you can't reach out to somebody, to a professional, then online is definitely the next best thing to at least get some type of solution for what you're going through, to be able to treat yourself. And then the NHS actually recommends self help therapy as a useful first step if you're unsure whether or not to seek further help. I know that a lot of people are hesitant in going to therapy, or like they don't feel comfortable with it. Which brings me to my next point, that some people might not want to have face to face therapy due to a variety of reasons. So some people just really don't feel comfortable with that. So if helping yourself by reading stuff online is what will, help to treat you, then you should do it. And as well, many doctors do actually agree that it's good that people have the tools to be able to help themselves, because mental health is something that I think now it's becoming more prominent and people are paying more attention to it. But like a lot of people just go through symptoms of mental illnesses every day without even really thinking about, like, oh, I should be taking care of my mental health. Like, this isn't normal. Like, I should be getting treated for this. Like, I should be helping myself. So doing some sort of research is better than doing nothing and letting the illness get worse or take over. And then there are actually excellent, credible resources that people can use, such as Health Finder and Medline Plus, which gives, like not official diagnoses, but it'll give symptoms, a way to treat yourself, how to like place yourself into a specific category based on what you're going through. So this can be really helpful to people.
Expensive and inaccessible diagnosis. When it comes to self-diagnosis, it doesn't always come with bad intentions. With the right research and understanding, self-diagnosing can be very good and helpful for some people. One reason being that many people might not have the financial ability or accessibility to get diagnosed by a professional. So according to a survey that was done by Cohen Veterans Network and National Council for Behavioral Health, some reasons of why people couldn't get a diagnosis were as followed. So more than half, around 56% of the 5,024 Americans surveyed want mental health services, either for themselves or a loved one. But about 3/4 said that there are access issues. So around 34% of these people say that these access issues arise due to the cost of the services, as well as poor coverage in terms of the insurance that they hold. And then others said some issues arise when talking about the stigma found around mental health, as well as the lack of quality and care when it comes to some of these services. So, according to the article, around 1 in 4 people have to choose between paying for their daily necessities or paying for mental health care. That's completely ridiculous to think about because mental health care, mental health access is completely important. It's just like your physical health, and it should be easily accessible, and you shouldn't have to choose between either paying for your necessities or paying for mental health care. You should be able to get both. Another reason for inaccessibility could be a language barrier. So some people that might need to reach out to get mental health help might not speak English as their first language. Makes it harder for them to go out and get diagnosed and fully understand what they're being diagnosed with, what it means, how they can get treated. But even after they get diagnosed, perhaps, it would make it harder for them to get treated. A lot of people in America speak different languages, of course, and English might not be their first language. They might not speak English at all. And even if they do get diagnosed or are diagnosed with something, they might not be able to find a therapist or someone that can help them easily because it's not as accommodating to everyone, because most therapists speak English. There's not certain therapists. I'm sure you could find them, but it's, again, not as easily accessible. So in some circumstances, it is easier to self-diagnose because it can give people a sense of ease when they know they might not have the finances or accessibility to get diagnosed or treated by a professional. Overall, mental health is just as important as your physical health, and the inaccessibility for mental health treatment is completely ridiculous given the outward need for it. People should be given the accessibility to get help for their mental health, because there are a lot of people struggling in today's world, and not everyone is able to get help for it.
So, my topic is self diagnosing stigma in social media, and an argument against self diagnosing mental illnesses is that it creates a lot of stigma around mental health as well as the people who struggle with it. Social media has displayed a lot of self diagnosing, especially if the person is diagnosing themselves wrong or doing the wrong intent. The rise of self diagnosing online has become prominent in our online life in recent years. Self diagnosing is dangerous and should not be done, but we continue to see it all over social media, especially recently. TikTok has gained popularity and displays lots of creators' mental illnesses, leading to younger children and teens believing they also have similar symptoms. An article on Mental Health interviews a doctor about the use of social media and TikTok when it comes to self diagnosing, and she agreed that there's been an uprising of children and teens with mental health issues, some getting help and some convincing themselves they have a mental illness. Personally, she's seen many young teen girls come in with something similar to Tourette syndrome, but none of them have it. They self diagnose themselves with it from watching so many creators on TikTok talk about their life with Tourette's. The solution she suggested for them was to go 2 weeks off TikTok, and suddenly they no longer had the tics and did not think they had Tourette's anymore. Not only are people talking themselves into thinking they have these mental illness symptoms, but they are also faking mental illnesses on social media and diagnosing themselves with something they do not have. Self-diagnosing is harmful because some younger users on social media are faking mental illnesses, which is leading to false information and stigmas being spread about the illnesses. Social media has enabled us to see and be exposed to so many more things, and one of them being seeing creators struggle with mental illnesses. Their intention is to bring awareness and clear the stigma around being mentally ill, but in some cases, this is doing the opposite and leading to children faking the same illnesses. An interesting quote from an article written by the Viewpoint Center says, self diagnosing on social media can lead to exaggerating symptoms or overlooking the true cause of these symptoms. It also normalizes symptoms that can be debilitating for people who actually struggle with mental health issues like anxiety disorders. The normalization and stigma these people are creating by self diagnosing is harmful to the community who actually struggle with these illnesses. For example, having OCD does not mean you just like a clean room, or being nervous for a presentation doesn't mean that you immediately have diagnosable anxiety. There's already a lot of stigma around mental illnesses, and the uprising of self diagnosing on social media has brought a new added layer. People who don't struggle with mental illnesses see these creators online who aren't actually struggling with the illnesses they say they are, and if the video gains popularity, it's spreading false information and creating more stigma around it. Self-diagnosing has created many more negative impacts than positive ones when looking at the stigma it's produced and continued, as well as the fake information that platforms spread when it comes to showing signs of mental illnesses.
When someone self diagnoses, they are assuming they understand all of the subtleties, discrepancies, and complexities of that mental illness. They're assuming that based on what they've researched online or on social media or what they've seen be presented in front of them is 100% true for them without considering environmental factors and neurological factors. So, for example, if someone was experiencing severe mood swings, they might assume they are bipolar. But what they're not considering is that mood swings are a common symptom amongst multiple mental health conditions. They might be depressed and are experiencing mood swings because of an unhealthy environment, or maybe their mood swings are due to anxiety. According to the article by Serini Pillai, one of the greatest dangers of self diagnosis in psychological syndromes is that you might miss a medical disease that masquerades as a psychiatric syndrome. Someone might confuse their irregular heartbeat for anxiety when it's actually a severe heart condition and not seek out medical treatment for this and just assume, oh, well, I'm anxious. Or maybe they'll assume a personality change as a form of depression or trauma when it is in some form of a brain tumor. Self diagnosis also undermines the position of a doctor or psychiatric agent who has been studying psychological disorders for years. Approximately two-thirds of people who present to outpatient clinics with anxiety have depression as well. In general, when two or more syndromes occur in the same person, we call this comorbidity. When people self-diagnose, they often miss comorbidity that exists. This can lead to someone who is able to seek treatment to deny reality. If a patient was convinced they had depression and ADD when in fact they had, let's say, bipolar disorder and PTSD, they may not be open to that real diagnosis and cling on to their previous misconceived diagnosis they gave themselves. They might resist medication, treatment, or other forms of therapy. And here's our works cited. Where do I end this?